All right. Welcome back to IT Security Labs, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me every week on these live streams. Today, I have yet another interesting machine. I actually created a machine last week, and it was time that we go back and start learning more about Active Directory. So here's the plan for today. I don't have any slides, but here's the goal. Our main goal is to learn about Windows Active Directory and how we can actually attack it and also be able to dump credentials. So I created a machine called controller. If you look in our discussion in our community channel, or if you look in the description of this machine on this video, you will notice that I already have a link to a drive, Google Drive, that you can download. So download the machine if you want to follow along. But the idea here is this machine works in VMware, Fusion, Workstation, Player, whatever you want to do there. Hey Phil, it's good to see you, and BT and DeadSec. I'm very excited to do this tonight, as always. So the first thing that we do is, let's start with an Nmap. -SV, -SC. I think mine is on 192.168.38.181. So if you import that machine, it's going to have a DHCP IP address. Remember, our main goal tonight is to make sure that we know how to break into a machine. If it is part of a domain controller, if it's part of a domain, or if it is the domain controller, we need to know how do we steal all the other users' passwords. And that's our main goal today. So if I scan this machine, right now I'm running my Nmap scan. I should be able to see some of this traffic here in Security Onion. As you can see, in the last 20 minutes, this was my baseline. Let's see if it spikes. We should see a spike here because I'm actually doing intrusion detection here. We should also see in our main Security Onion a lot of events coming in. So let me see if this actually is catching it or not. Let's go to the Security Onion alerts. So I'll just replace this one. So Security Onion is an intrusion detection system, and it will be able to tell us if we have any funny traffic happening. So as you can see, Surikata is already complaining here. It's saying, hey, we see someone is running scans. So if you are going to be running an Nmap scan, don't be silly. This is what happens. By default, Security Onion will actually pick you up, or any decent intrusion detection system out there will know that you're running an Nmap scan. And this was, right now as we are running, we're getting caught. So that's another goal here that we have, is make sure that we can see if we can get any alerts triggered here. I was trying to actually detect credential dumping, so I'm still working on my rules. I had to create rules from scratch. So I'll show you what they look like though. But our Nmap is still running against 181. So we'll continue to see this traffic populating here. Let's go back to Kibana. This was our baseline. We were around 70, maybe 80 events. Then it was slowing down in the last 20 minutes. So let's see what it looks like now. All right. So from 70, well, now we spiked all the way to 1100. So this tells you as a defender, hey, something funny is happening on my network here. Someone is messing around. Why do I show you this? The goal is don't be silly, right? If you're trying to hide, if you're doing a pen test, don't run Nmap with these default flags like I'm doing here. This is what happens here. You trigger out all kinds of alerts because the Nmap user agent, for example, gets caught. So if I zoom in here, you actually see the Nmap user agent is very, very silly. All right. So all these are from Nmap. It's very lousy and noisy. It's an indicator that you're dealing with either an attacker who is not so experienced or somebody who doesn't care. One of those two, because somebody who is experienced and cares will not do what I'm doing here. In this case, I actually want to get caught. So this is one of them. You're going to see a lot of connection events in Zik. But after our Nmap is done running, this is what we're going to see. A lot of ports. So the dead giveaway that this is a Windows machine and it's a domain controller is you're going to see DNS running, in this case port 53, and you're also going to see Kerberos running with NetBIOS LDAP. Right away your mind should tell you, oh, this must be a Windows Active Directory machine. Someone says, hey, what should we do instead? What you should actually do is write your own custom scripts, a simple bash script to do your port scans, TCP scans. Maybe just do SYN scans around the network, maybe do a foot SYNARC scan. Write your own custom tools instead of running Nmap. Or you can use Nmap. You can do, Nmap has some features that you can actually use where you can, instead of running it by default, you can actually use it to spoof an original IP address. For example, I've actually used it where you can say, hey, this is the source, and the source IP address that's scanning is not even yours. You can change the user agent on Nmap so that it's not, the Nmap user agent. There are a few things you can do to Nmap, but the best way is just don't use Nmap. Write your own simple port scanner. Port scanners are not that bad because, we know that they're sending a bunch of SYN packets. You're waiting for SYNARC packets, and then you can just send a bunch of SYN packets, and whoever says SYNARC back, you can create a simple script that will tell you that, that thing is responding, that port is responding. If you want a simple ping scan to see who is alive on the network, you can also do that. All right, so dead giveaway. This is a domain controller. By default, every time I see these ports here, you don't see Kerberos and Active Directory, Kerberos and DNS and LDAP running on the same machine, and it doesn't happen to be the domain controller. It's either the backup domain controller or it is the main domain controller. So now that we know that we're dealing with a Windows domain controller, we can start doing some scans here to see if this thing can actually talk and give you some users by default. I grossly and negligently configured this thing to talk about all kinds of things. So if you wanted, you can scan for users. I'm pretty sure this thing would talk back to you and give you a list of users because I misconfigured it so bad. But in this case, I wanted something more interesting. Instead of the classic, let's brute force Active Directory for users. So let's do all this. I wanted something more elegant. I was like, okay, let's look at this. Let's leave Active Directory alone. There's something silly that Windows administrators do. I used to be a Windows administrator, and I've done this before. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's a very, very careless thing. They will run other services on their domain controller. For example, the silliest thing that they do is they'll do a file share on the same computer that they're running their domain. So they're sharing files from the same place. Sometimes in extreme cases, they'll run an FTP service. In this case, we have port 8080. This is, you're going to notice that this is not running here for the sake of running a website, but we do have port 8080. So what do? You're going for an OSCP, you're doing a pen test, and you see a machine that looks like an Active Directory domain controller. The first thing that I do is I normalize things. I say, okay, great. All these here, domain controller. That's fine. Let me look for anything that's interesting here. Well, first of all, these people are silly enough to run 3389, so which is remote desktop. So we have Windows remote desktop here. Terminal service is running. So RDP is running. Not necessarily bad because I still need credentials for that one, and I can try to brute force, but I'll probably get logged out. But most people do not run this service on their main domain controller and expose that port to everybody. And if they do, they kind of need some help in understanding what should be done there. But worst of all, they don't run port 8080 on their domain controller. You do not run a website on your domain controller. Spin up another server and do that. But because they did this, we're going to open a browser and try to see if we can get there. So let me see. All right. So if you open a browser and type our IP address here, you'll notice that right away you'll be met with this. It says, hey, first of all, it's only HTTP, it's not HTTPS. Big problem there, right? But also, it's asking for username and password. We don't know what this thing is. So we can try to ask it and say admin password. Nothing. Well, that's not helpful for us. Yeah, that's really not helpful for us. So what do we do here? We need to interrogate this thing, and please help me. I don't want to go bust on this thing again, right? So what do we do? So we can copy that, and maybe we can do some directory brute forcing, but we can go back here. Let's see if we got any headers from Nmap, because Nmap does actually interrogate these services for us. So let's see. Access denied is that page that you saw that was denying me. But hey, authenticate digest realm is equals to ThinVNC. So we see now this is a ThinVNC service. So let's get this straight. These administrators, they wanted to access their machine using port 3389 and ThinVNC at the same time. Because I know what ThinVNC is. It's a VNC server that's running there. So maybe they wanted to run a third-party service to do some work here. Okay, let's see if we find anything more. All right, nothing. So your only hint here is that it's a ThinVNC server. So what you do in this case is you look at that. If you didn't look at that, you'll be banging your head on a wall and wondering like, what's happening here? So we don't have a version for this ThinVNC server. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to Google ThinVNC default creds and see what I can find from Google. And this is a classic OSCP kind of style of things. You know, always Google default creds if you are faced with something like, hey, ThinVNC default cred. But when I Google that, Google tells me something else. They're like, hey, there's a client authentication bypass thing. Okay, I like that. I'm looking for default creds and you're telling me about something else. So let's put must include ThinVNC. Okay. So instead of the route that we were going, let's look at this. There is a client authentication bypass vulnerability that we can read about. If you look very closely, you will notice that this looks like our site, right? The IP address, except the port, their port was 588 something. My port here is 8080. Okay, we're getting somewhere. So this is my site. And this is what it looks like. So when we tried with multiple through the wrong authentication credentials, we got 401 error. This can be bypassed using the following vector. Or they're accessing the windows.ini, and it's a GET request. And you get this response. And here's a POC. They're showing you that there's more. Okay. So let's take that. Let's take it to ExploitDB, the trusted source of all exploits. All right, now we're looking at a Python script. So if we try to understand what this is doing, we might be able to do it by hand. It's not a lot of lines of code, as you can see. It's very, very straightforward. So they're defining the URL, formatting things, and defining the port here, 588. That's the example. What if, instead of running this script, I just went straight and maybe used a tool like curl, and this is XYZ. If you read more about this exploit, it means that it doesn't matter what you put here. All you can do is, in this case, you can actually ask for the ThinVNC credentials, or you can ask for the Windows INI credentials. So let's go and run a curl command against our host and the port on this path here. Or we can run that script. It doesn't really matter which one we use, but let's run it by hand. We run this as sudo minus capital X. Let's send a get. That's what the get request to HTTP 192.168.38.181. With the path. Don't forget the port. The path here, it looks like they're just making it up. So subscribe to me, please. How many did we put? 3, 4. 1, 2, ThinVNC.ini. .ini. Okay, let's make sure that we did this right. All right, we're just sending a simple curl get request here. Let's see if this works. A normal person will look at this and be like, this is just not working. I don't know what's happening here. But here's what happens with Windows. If you send request with curl, I've done this a lot with, thank God for CTFs. You have to try to escape. I don't know why, but this happens all the time with Windows. So I'm going to try to foil it. Let me leave the last one unmessed with. See what just happened there? That's what happens with CTFs. I've done it on Hexabox. I've seen one where I ran curl and told me to go £send. I followed someone's walkthrough. They were like, oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. Escape these. So if anybody knows about these / escape tactic in Windows, let me know. But hey, if you're going to take something today, is if you send a curl command to a Windows service, you can try to escape your characters using this. Put it in your notes, because that actually is something that used to get me all the time. But now we see we have a user of Vagrant. Any password of Vagrant, very secure. Very, very secure. You could have guessed this one or brute forced your way in using Hydra, probably. Okay, so we have Vagrant. Let's go and put that. All right, so after putting, if you put Vagrant, where's Vagrant? Where's my site? Come on. Okay, there it is. So once you get in, you might be like, wait a second. What's happening here? Well, this service here says, hey, this is a server. You can use it to manage clients. Well, we only know of one machine today, so we're going to put the same IP address here. Just the IP. All right, let's connect. So as you can see, it looks like we are able to connect. We can give it a second here. Remember that we also had RDP, Windows Remote Desktop, open. What are the chances? Let's bet some money here. What are the chances that people will put VNC, the service, with the same password as the Windows service, as the same password as the local or whatever administrator or account on that system? Very high, because people don't like to manage multiple passwords. So here you can actually see that we are actually able to get in there. It's probably because of my screen here, but we are able to sign in. So I will say disconnect. Let's use RDP. So if you use Windows Remote Desktop, you can actually sign in, as you can see on my screen here. I already signed in. But it's the same password, Vagrant. So that tiny whatever VNC service and its vulnerability, very simple way to break in, and can cause you a little headache if you were trying to run some tools against it, if you didn't know, like, your way around things. So it's usually a simple thing, but some tedious or a little bit of skill that is obscure that you need. If you're just comfortable dealing with things, you'll be able to deal with that. Okay, so once we get in, I chose RDP because it's a cleaner screen. But here's what you notice right away. This is a domain controller, but if you didn't know that, you can also check once you sign in. Or someone says they had a black screen. Yeah, I think I had a black screen because I was signed in. I think so. When I first ran this machine, I was actually able to sign in. So if you got a black screen, that was a bug that I didn't account for. It worked on my high resolution screen. Then on this low resolution screen here, it put the first one on me. Who am I /o. If you do a who am I /o, you're going to notice that, you're a local admin here. So some people might be like, well, what's the point then? If you're already a local admin on the machine, what's the big deal? Well, we want to take it further. I just wanted to answer a simple question this week. What happens if you break into a computer and you're a local admin, but you are not a domain admin? Because those are two different things, right? This account here manages the computer locally. What we want is the ability to manage multiple domain joined computers. Well, the easiest thing that you can do here, since you're already signed in with a graphical user interface, is you can just go to Server Manager and go and just reset the administrator password if you wanted to. That I didn't account for that until I sent the machine out. I was like, oh, somebody's just going to go to Active Directory users and computers and just reset the administrator password, sign back as an administrator, domain administrator, and dump the hash. But hey, that's the good thing is I'm not actually selling these machines, so you get to deal with that oversight. But here's an administrator account. You can right click, reset the password. That's a domain admin here. But let's assume we do not have this, but we have a valid domain account. Let's say, we have a valid user. We have a few things that we can do that I wanted to talk about. As I was doing some research on this, because it's something that I was also interested in, I was like, you know what can I really do? There's a lot of things that you can do. I found that there was a tactic that was used by a group earlier this year, a Russian-based offensive security hacking group. Where is that information? Right here. So this is information about a group that is being tracked. This is an alert from US CERT. But what you notice is that they were using credential dumping using NTDS. I only got here because I wanted to know, okay, how do I do NTDS credential harvesting? And most importantly, how much noise does a Windows machine make when people are messing with NTDS.dit. Since this is a very important file, if somebody makes a copy of it, wouldn't you want to know what does Windows say about that? Are there event logs that you should watch for? And if you're going to be watching those, are they stealthy enough that they are not going to create a lot of false positives in your environment? And those are the questions that I was going for, other than, hey, what commands can I run? Because you can find the commands to run. So I hope you can start to think about that. But since this group used this method for stealing, there are two ways that you can do it. You can use well, not two ways, there are multiple ways, but major groups of how you can do it. You can do it locally on the machine, or you can steal those credentials remotely with a valid user. There are multiple tools you can use as well. And in this case, I found this article here from Pentest Lab. I tried all of them. I'll only show you maybe a couple of them. I tried all of them because I wanted to practice a little bit. But first of all, this file here exists in the C Windows NTDS.dit. This file contains every domain user's password hash. So think about it this way. If you can get access to this file, you might be able to get access to every single user that exists in the environment. So if you're targeting some user and you want to read their email or sign in as them and do some nefarious stuff, this is the file to go for, which is why I think it's important for people to watch. So first, you can use the obvious, Mimikatz. So I'll actually show you how to use Mimikatz in a little bit here. We just run that command. It's not that bad. Next, we can use PowerShell Empire with a couple modules here that you can use. PowerShell Empire is way easy. Of course, I am biased against Nisheng. I mean, Nisheng is my go-to. I mean, first of all, it's the name Nisheng. And Nisheng has saved me a lot when I wanted to get reverse shells. So, of course, I wanted to show you how you can use Nisheng for dumping that file. So you cannot just go on a Windows system and just grab that NTDS.dit file. You are going to need to do a couple of things here. First, let's get Nisheng to the system. But we are going to use the copy.-vss ps1 Nisheng PowerShell script. So in my Kali, let's do cd machines. So I'm going to my controller. Then I already have Nisheng scripts loaded on my system, so I can use my locate here. It will show me like, hey, in your root, you have your gather PowerShell script. So I can just do a simple copy of this, bring it down. All right. This will copy this right here. As you can see. All right. So next, we can now get this to the victim. You can do a few things here. I like the Python 3 method, but you can also do, network file shares. So let's use Python 3. This is only good for CTFs where we're just transferring files in plain text. Ideally, you can use Metasploit and use Metasploit modules to transfer these files in an encrypted ways if you're using like HTTPS reverse shell, for example. But hey, for CTF, we're happy with this. Now, let's move the file back. Let's move this file to our victim. I'll open PowerShell. I like PowerShell ISE because it's better. Felix says, let's use CrackMap exec. Yeah, actually, CrackMap exec is easier. The one thing that I wanted, though, is the living off the land idea, where, instead of bringing this PowerShell here, we can actually just use native NTDS.exe file. So to be honest, now that I'm even saying this, I'm thinking, why even bother? Why am I even bringing in niching PowerShell script that is to run and create more noise when we can run, the actual binary? Well, there are some rules that will get you caught if you run that NTDS.exe binary. There are found some endpoint detection rules, like a wazoo rule that I was messing with earlier, that will get you caught. So maybe niching might not be a bad idea, but if you run external PowerShell scripts, you're going to also trigger a bunch of noise for people. People are going to be like, wow, who is executing these files and why are they doing that? And as you can see right now, in order for me to even do this, I'm going to need to run setutil. Setutil is used for certificate management and all that good stuff. We use it for downloading files. So we're saying, hey, let's download the file to see Windows temp, and let's name it that. So setutil, also another way of triggering the defenders. Setutil is also heavily monitored by most people. They like to know when somebody runs setutil, especially if it includes URLs info in there. So you might get caught as well here. That's the beauty of these things that we're doing here. As we run these commands, every command that I run, I always think, what am I doing? How is this going to help me or not help me? And most importantly, like, can I wake somebody up who is sleeping? Imagine you're walking and you're trying to sneak into a building and there's a couple of dogs that are sleeping. You probably don't want to be running. You want to be as stealthy as possible. Probably walk on the grass instead of on the rocks. Same thing as when you do these deliveries. But hey, I got setutil here. Now I gotta just go to Windows temp. You might think like, hey, why did you put the temp? You're administrator, you can put it anyway. It's a habit, actually. I'm so used to putting stuff here. But also another part is it's easier to clean up. Mostly, I think in Windows, just like any system, the temp directory gets cleared up when we reboot the system. Don't quote me on that. I haven't verified in Windows, but it should. That's the point here. But now let's just load the module and see if we can end up with our NTDS.dit file. So we run copy VSS and then this command here. I need to import the module first. All right. Then load the module. No, I think it's just copy VSS. Then copy VSS, then the destination of C shadow. I don't want the destination of C shadow. This is the one that I want. My terminal got stuck here, but now so instead of going to the C shadow that they have here, so we're doing a destination dir of C Windows temp. We should end up with the two files that we need. Can I paste? And there we go. The file has been copied. If I do an ls -la, ls, just ls, I now have my NTDS.dit here. I also have a system file. With these two files, I can actually get all the password hashes, simple and straightforward. That's one way. So you need these two files, then you can use a few tools to get the password hashes. But with these, the next thing that you need to do is maybe exfiltrate these files to your Kali Linux and then get the final results. That's why it's not a preferred method, because now we have one more step. Let's get these files out of here and generate more noise. Somebody's going to see me moving this many bytes out of a DC to my IP address. That's not fun. How about we go the lazy way? To save us some time, I already have Mimikatz here, but let me use a terminal that actually might look better. Somebody help me, but every time I have to use Mimikatz, I have to use the terminal for stability. It works way better in here than PowerShell. Okay. Mimikatz. Okay, so with Mimikatz, it's the same deal. That was Nisha here. The good thing about Mimikatz is it's going to print out all the stuff for us. I want to dump every user that ever existed in their password. So as you can see, we have some work to do here. Okay. So for starters, this is not our domain. Our domain is called windomain.local. Okay. So we gotta change that. And this one. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if we can actually just get everything. Then I'm now interested in CrackMap exec, because the more the better. Every domain user and their password is now printed out to us. So this was Mimikatz locally. And as always, anyone with a grain of salt who is doing some detection in the environment, you run Mimikatz, they're gonna know. I will tell you, I've shown on this channel that if you run endpoint detection systems, Mimikatz is the one thing that you're guaranteed any decent EDR knows about it. So maybe fun for us to do here. But yeah. Oh, I pasted it twice and it still ran. That's awesome. I didn't even notice. I was like, why do I have to do that? All right. So we have everybody's password hashes. Most of the time, because I'm lazy, I don't even crack password hashes. I do pass the hash attacks, or I do like, if WinRM is running, and I give them the hash and I go on. I only crack the hash if I have to, but if I have other ways to use the hash to get my way around things, I would. But right now, as you can see, I got 105 users, and that's all the users that we actually have in Active Directory users and computers. So the next order of business is, if you are going to be doing this detection, there are certain things you should look for. For starters, Mimikatz being ran on your system, definitely be looking out for that. Then, of course, PowerShell execution. PowerShell monitoring is going to be a good friend as well, especially if people are going to be bringing in external PowerShell commands. So PowerShell logging isn't that bad, because you don't run PowerShell commands that often. In this case, I was actually running a lot. You will notice that I don't have any detection here, and I'll show you why. For full disclosure, I broke my sysmon. That's what happened here. So I was trying to get sysmon to detect what I was showing you, and that was like 30 minutes before the stream started. But if I show you like last 24 hours, you're going to notice that I actually had Sysmon running and was happy. See? Sysmon events were coming in. Then I went in there, I started messing with Sysmon. I think I saved the file, the XML file, with an extra space or something. Then it stopped working. So there you have it. That's how we can actually break into a domain controller and steal some credentials, at least from today with what we have shown you. The goal is for us to learn one little bit every single time. So today we will learn about this tactic that this Russian hacking group was using by dumping that file. So it's a thing. It's not just a CTF kind of game that we're playing here. Attackers use this OS credential dumping using NTDS. This was in January when this was reported. So it's worth us looking into, and I doubt that they even stopped using that. So every time we do some of these, I always want to make sure that we tie it to actually what's actually happening out there instead of just, CTF break into something and we're seeing Kumbaya. We actually need to see that it's actually something that matters at work. And in this case, I saw that it actually does matter, and highly encourage you to read more about it and also think about detection and other methods that I didn't account for here. With that, I think that was enough for one day. I need to go back and actually fix my security onion, make sure that I can get my Sysmon working. Otherwise, I'll take any questions that you might have. I know DeadSec said he had a question. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. Your support is really appreciated. The more we do this, the better that more people can actually identify us. So if you subscribe to the channel, that's awesome. Another part that I wanted to mention is I'm actually running my security onion on physical hardware, and I have no way of actually doing snapshots. So I have to go and mess with the containers using Salt if I mess things up and rebuild them. Thank you all for the likes. I see them coming. That's awesome. Really appreciate it. Yes, BT says Mimikatz is very noisy. Way, way noisy. I'm telling you. I've experimented with it. And if you really want to see how fun this is, try to run Mimikatz and run Sysmon and Wazoo and a few generic rules. Heck, even moving Mimikatz as a binary in plain text on a network triggers detection. I think tools like Straka will even tell you that that's Mimikatz there for you, which is not ideal. So that was awesome, everybody. Since we don't have any questions, thank you for being here. Things are getting better here. I got a nicer mic. I hope it sounds different. It's the Shure SMB microphone. I'm still working on it. And the content is also getting better. So thank you for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on Sunday, where we'll attack another Windows machine. I made 2 this week. So we have 1 more next week. Thanks, and see you later.